Is my video a little bit framey on your side?
No, looks
Okay.
okay to me.
Okay, just that what you're sending back looks like I'm a little bit framey, so I didn't know if it was just your Discord video coming back or if it was my video going towards you. So that's good.
I mean, but you know me, I'm immune to that stuff for the most part. I just tend not to notice it. So
Sure.
maybe it is the good people who are watching right now, they can tell us if Lloyd
Who's
looks like he's going through a slideshow or something.
I do have to bump up the brightness just a titch.
Just a titch. That's a word. Hey everybody, how's it going? Happy to see
Yeah.
you guys here. I'm not going to read off everybody's name because there's a lot of people talking in here, but thanks for being here and hanging out with us. You guys are awesome. Just a quick heads up before we get started. I know a lot of people were looking forward to D&D after the show. That got pushed to next week because one of our players, when you have children, grandparents just show up. That's what they do, and they don't tell people ahead of time that that's going to happen. So one of our players is like, "Grandma is coming over to see the kids. I got no control over this." And when you're the parent and they're the grandparent, you just say, "Okay, come on over."
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it got pushed to next week. So if you didn't know, Lloyd and I and some of our friends play D&D right here on this channel, and for everybody the live stream is available, but afterwards it's only for members. So if you are a member and you want to go back and watch the last couple of episodes where they fought through burning cities and goblins and stuff, make sure you check that out. But maybe we'll see you next week for D&D.
Hopefully, I want to kill some goblins.
That's okay, it gives me more time to build stuff for for everything. All right. We got to record a podcast about video games. Are you ready, Lloyd?
Yeah, I am. There's a lot of great stuff to talk about, so I'm really excited here.
All right, here we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Stadiacast. I'm Bill. That's Lloyd. What's going on, Lloyd?
Not much, little sunburnt, I gotta say. Went out to the beach in my friend's cabin for the whole day yesterday, and I'm feeling a little burnt, little crispy. So at least I'm sitting down and I'm not moving too much, so it should be okay.
I'm going to paraphrase something that David Rodriguez Jr. said in chat. Reason number 12,000, I don't know, 125,373 not to go outside. There you go. So be careful of the sun. You got to use that sunscreen, man,
Yep.
especially now. Before we get started, this is a podcast all about Google Stadia, and you can check it out live on our YouTube channel over at nerdnest.tv every single Sunday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern time. Lloyd and I sit down. We talk about all of the things that are happening with our with the cloud and gaming in the cloud. And thank you very much for coming and hanging out with us. If you are here with us live, you can use the super chat feature to make absolutely sure that we see your message, or if there's something that you want us to talk about, you can use that, and then we'll add that to the show at the end of the show. You can also use the, if you're watching this after the fact, you can also hit the thanks button. And just like earlier this week, and I meant to have this open, but I closed it because I had to reboot my computer because Windows updated and changed all my sound drivers around. Jack to Sleep, which I'm probably saying his name wrong, did a super thanks earlier this week, and thank you very much for that, Jack. We do appreciate it. You're awesome. All right, and speaking of people supporting the show, becoming members and stuff like that, we got a bunch of people who became members this week. I got their names on the screen right now, but you are all awesome. Thank you very much. Let's get into Stadia news, though. Before we talk about the news, what have you been playing, Lloyd?
I've been playing a little bit of Control, man. Control kind of stealth dropped on Stadia last week. We got the This Week on Stadia blog post, and Control Ultimate Edition was one of the games that was added, or the game that was added. So I've been checking that out. I have previously played Control on PlayStation 4. Was not a good experience. Very not good last gen. It was slow and framey, and struggled to reach 30 frames a second. And then I played it to completion on my Xbox Series X right after I got it, after the next gen patch came out, and the game performed beautifully. It's an amazing story. So I was kind of interested to see where Control would sort of fit in on Stadia. Would it be more last gen, more current gen? And it seems like it's more current gen with a little bit of a caveat. There's no ray tracing, but the graphics are great. There's two different modes you can choose. You can choose the beauty mode or the frame rate mode, essentially. So if you're playing on the mode that is meant for beautiful graphics, it's a max of 4K. 60 frames a second. And if you play on the other mode, I believe, or sorry, 4K 30, I
30.
think.
Yeah, it's 30,
and then
and
if you
in pretty mode is 30.
and then yeah, if you play the other one, the it's 1080p 60, I believe. So it's kind of in the middle, or not even in the middle. It's right near the end of the dial when you're comparing the two different versions that I've played. And it controls, pun intended, and plays perfectly. It looks great. Some people are saying, oh, it looks like a PlayStation 3 game, or it looks PCRA in the chat room says it looks like a PlayStation 4 port. Well, it is a PlayStation 4 port because it started on the last gen. I think what a lot of people are noticing, saying that it looks like an older game, is there's film grain, and there's two different graphics. There's graphic processing stuff that it puts over top. It puts like a film grain, so everything's kind of gritty because it is kind of like a film noir sort of game. That's what they're trying to emulate a little bit. So it has a little bit of like grain in some of the textures,
Which you can turn
and then
that off, by the way, in the
exactly.
settings.
And then there's motion blur. So every movement makes the screen kind of blur out a little bit. If you turn those things off, it looks great. Obviously, it doesn't look as great as it did on my series because it's not doing ray tracing. So
Mhm.
this game has a lot of glass, a lot of reflections, a lot of stone that has reflections, and a lot of that stuff just isn't there. But the game is fine if you're not running two 4K screens side by side and somehow using both controllers at the same time and looking from side to side, you're not going to notice. It's a great port, and I'm really interested to see if they take what they've given and increase the graphic quality a little bit down the road, as we've seen with a lot of games like Borderlands and a bunch of other games have received graphical updates. So anyway, graphics aside, Control is a fantastic title. It's spooky. There's a mystery. There's a lot of unknowns. Sort of like, are these ghosts? Are they a cult? Like, you don't know what's happening. And it's just a great ride from start to finish. And yeah, I'm a big fan of Control, and it's great to play it on Stadia.
I'm still super early in the game, and I'm really having fun with it. As far as the graphics, you said it perfectly. I was about to jump in and say this. If you're not playing with it side by side with some other platform, and this is true for almost everything. Like, I constantly see people sitting there and they're counting pixels or they're counting frames, and then they're like, it's 3 frames per second faster on PlayStation than it is on Xbox. And I just want to say to those people, who cares? It doesn't
Yep.
matter. Just play the game and enjoy it. Do the shadows look better on other platforms? Yeah. When you pause the game and stare at it, you're like, "Oh man, that doesn't look good, very good." But when you're just playing and you're in the middle of throwing a big bag of, I don't know, flour, I don't know why is in that. Like, they got like big sandbags in this building.
Yeah.
I don't know why they're there. But when you're just playing the game and you're throwing a giant sandbag at somebody's face, who cares? Just play the game. It's fun. But anyway, I've been playing that a little bit as well. I've never played it before. I played it like for, I don't know, 5 minutes on Nintendo Switch, and it felt sluggish and like I
Yeah.
was trying to push the controller through syrup. Didn't
Yep.
like it, so I shut it off and stopped playing. By the way, that is also a streaming version. I don't think anybody, by the way, was surprised that Control came to Stadia. It's streaming on the Nintendo Switch. It's streaming on Amazon Luna. It's already a
Yep.
streaming game, so it made sense for them to bring it to Stadia. I haven't played it on Luna. I haven't played it on. I didn't play it very much on the Nintendo Switch, but what I've played on the Stadia version is really good, and I'm very much enjoying it. whether or not the graphics are up to par is another thing. Like, I saw a bunch of people tweeting about The Ascent, which, by the way, you and I need to play, Lloyd. It's really good.
Yes, we do.
That just came to Game Pass on the Xbox, and it also came to Game Pass on PC. And for some reason, everybody is complaining that, well, there's this weird thing where the Game Pass version on PC, and I know this isn't related to Stadia, but it's related to the mentality of gamers. Um, the Game Pass version on PC doesn't have ray tracing or DLSS, and the Steam version does have ray tracing and DLSS for some
Right.
reason, whatever that reason is. And I've been playing it on Xbox, doesn't have ray tracing or DLSS. And when I was playing the game, because I hadn't seen all of that, oh, it's so bad because of this stuff. I'm playing the game and I was like, oh my God, the clutter in the world as you're running around. There's just trash and detritus everywhere.
Right.
It was like, I was like, this is a gorgeous game. It's beautiful. I didn't notice that it didn't have ray tracing or DLSS. And
Right.
I'm convinced that if you talk to people who aren't paying attention to the negative nonsense, which that's got to be a shirt, I think, negative nonsense on the internet about all of this, like people just sit down and they play Control and they don't care about that stuff, they're going to have a blast. People who sit
Yeah.
down and play The Ascent on their Xbox or on Game Pass through PC, they're going to have a blast because it's about playing a game, not pausing a screen and counting the pixels or looking at it and making it look, the shadows are better over here. Just play. Anyway,
Mhm. Yeah.
sorry for my rant. What else have you been playing? Because that game's
Oh,
really good.
just a touch on Control. One other thing I thought of. Control to me is more of a story based game. Like you're there to figure out what the mystery is and complete the story. And I was chatting with a buddy at work. This was months ago, and we were talking about streaming games and PlayStation Plus and Game Pass and all the stuff, and Stadia, of course. And he's like, "Well, I'm just worried that the game I'm playing, this RPG that I'm playing, isn't going to look that great." And I was like, "Okay, are you playing the RPG for the graphics? Are you playing it for the story?" And he's like, "Oh, well, the story, I want to see what happens." And I was like, "Okay, do you care about the font that's used in a book? Do you care how pretty the paper is that you're reading?" He's like, "Well, no." And I was like, "Well, that's the same. Like, if this version of the game is 1% more ugly with whatever weird rating system you have, who cares if you're just there for the story?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, you're right." And then he continued to play it on streaming, and he's like, "This is great. I don't know why I was so negative about it." And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, I understand why people want beautiful things. That's
Mhm.
that there's people that go and buy like a Maserati and they detail it every single day because they want their car to be the best and they want their car to look the best. But I'm fine driving around in my in my SUV and having some dust on it. I don't care, and that's kind of what I think of the difference between people that are obsessed with graphical beauty compared to the rest of us that know that it exists and are okay with it, but it's not the end of the world when we play a game that doesn't have it.
Yeah. All right. You've also been playing more One Piece, which we talked about extensively last week.
Yeah.
If you missed that episode, go back and check it out. He talked extensively about One Piece, and I talked extensively about Chris Tales. Anything new that you want to say about One Piece?
Just that it continues to be good. I want to say about halfway through the game from what I can see as like the number of chapters and things like that, and it just keeps getting more ridiculous and just crazy. I want to watch every episode of One Piece so I can figure out what exactly is going on because it's just a wonderful game. So don't sleep if it's. I think it's still on sale for a few more days for a really decent price. It is a fun Spider-Man crossed with Assassin's Creed with an anime skin type game. Yeah, it's pretty decent price,
All right.
and it's a really good game.
Awesome. And so we had the free weekend. And did you play either of the? I mean, you already had both of these games. So
Yep.
did you jump in on any of those?
No, I was out of the city for the entire day yesterday. I got home and then fell asleep, so I haven't had any chance to get any of the free play stuff in. That's kind of what I'm hoping to do a little bit tonight.
So I got a question for you because you played a lot of Avengers
Yeah.
on Google Stadia, and I played it for the first time this weekend. and I was very disappointed. Not in necessarily okay. If I was playing as Thor, actually, if I was playing as Hulk or Captain America, where there's not a lot of aiming to do, felt fine to me.
Mhm.
When I was playing as Iron Man and I had to like aim at something, I was struggling big time. Like I could not like I felt like it was slow and sluggish. And look, I've played shooters on Stadia. There's no reason for it to feel like this. Is it just me or is that the experience?
I remember early on messing with my settings a little bit to make my reticule move a little bit faster when I was playing. Things do get a little bit better when you've unlocked a lot of your upgrades because you're spending less time, um, less time sort of using the really kind of glitchy, janky, to use a word that's in our title. Um, um, Skills. You get more into more crowd control stuff and other things as you start unlocking more of your skill tree. So yeah, I do remember right at the start, like there's the opening where you're kind of flying over the bridge as Iron Man and you're trying to target the person, and it was just like, what is happening here? Why can I not target them? I messed with my settings a little bit, but when you get a little bit further in the game, I didn't really care too much about that after the fact. It was a little bit jarring at the start, but either you learn to adapt or the settings that I changed was all that I needed to do.
Well, who did you play as though?
I played. I've got all my characters up to level 50.
Oh, okay. So everybody.
My main was for the most of the game was Thor. I loved the way Thor controlled. So I was running around as Thor and smacking people with Mjolnir and flying through the air. Dive bombs that created explosions, and it was fine. But with Thor, you're throwing that hammer a lot, and I didn't notice that the aiming controls were that off. Maybe it was just a maybe I needed a period of adjustment or whatever.
All right, that's fair. I had a bad time playing Avengers, and I'm happy that I didn't buy it. When that makes me sad because I really was excited to play that game. I'm probably gonna pass on it no matter how cheap it gets. Although there's this weird thing where they put Pro on Avengers, like on I can't remember. I didn't screenshot it, but there was like it was like Avengers Pro, and it was because it was the free weekend thing, and a lot of people are assuming that Avengers is now a pro game, and I think that they are going to be very disappointed by that.
Yeah.
If it becomes a pro game, I'll give it another shot, but I'm happy that I didn't spend money on it because I had a bad time with it, which is, it's okay if people disagree with me because disagreeing is what happens on the internet. Lloyd disagrees with me, and I'm not going to kick him off the show. He had fun with the game. I didn't, and that's okay. Olympics. I didn't. I played a little bit more of Olympics this weekend because of the free. Because of the free weekend, I might do an Olympic stream later on this week. I'm not sure if I have time, but that game is so good. Like I really have had fun playing Olympics. Have you played it much since it came out?
Yeah, I've played a few times here and there, doing some multiplayer and things like that. It is really fun. All the mini games are simplified in such a way that there's very few buttons that you have to hit.
Hmm.
So it really is fun for the whole family. Like you could play with a 4-year old, you can play with a 104-year-old, and the controls are easy enough to grasp for pretty much anybody, and it all performs really well. And even if you screw up, kind of some of the like hilarious animations was enough to make the kids start laughing and stuff like that.
I feel like it's my go-to basketball game because it's so simple. It reminds me of when I was a kid and my friends and I would sit on the floor at my friend's house and we would play double dribble on the NES for hours upon hours upon hours. I love the simplified gameplay mechanics
Yeah.
that are in this version of basketball and all of the other stuff. The one thing that I don't like is, and this is funny because you and I talked about this, is the boxing. I cannot get my head around it. Like it's
Yeah.
so simple. You just use the
Mhm.
sticks to box, but I always just get punched in the face over and over and over again, and I just can't get my head around it. So that's the
Right.
one that I avoid. And the judo. The judo one is very weird.
Yeah.
That it's like the controls are strange, and I feel like they don't quite land. But everything else that I played was really, really cool.
Yeah.
That game is great. I'm a huge fan of the Olympics game, which totally surprised me. You've also been playing a little bit of a fighter.
Yeah, I jumped into more Mortal Kombat 11 a little bit just to have a look at what is included with the gold package or whatever the Ultimate Edition or whatever it was called, the bundle that was on sale
Mm.
recently that comes with all the DLC. And man, it's just so weird playing a game that has Spawn in it, and it has it has the Terminator 2 with Arnold's face on it, and it has Rambo, and it's just like all these weird characters. RoboCop is in there as well, because I played a lot of Mortal Kombat 11 at launch. Didn't get any of the DLC, and then start jumping to this one, and I'm like, these characters are weird. I want to master them. So I'm gonna be playing a little bit more Mortal Kombat 11, but I realized that I hadn't actually booted it from when I bought it when it was on sale for like the crazy low price. So I wanted to at least jump in and check out some of those characters.
That would be a great game to have crowd play, where you could have somebody just say, "All right, you're the next one up." You fight somebody, the
Yep.
match is over in,
Yep.
I don't know, like 3 minutes or whatever, and then the next
Sure.
person comes in.
Put your quarter on the screen to get in line. Yeah, that would be a lot of fun for sure.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about the August Pro games. Stadia did a weird thing. Like they did a this week in Stadia post, and they didn't mention the Pro games for some reason because they
Yeah.
tweeted them instead. What do you think that's about?
Well, they tweeted the pro games 15 minutes before the blog post came out, which was really
It's
weird.
weird.
I'm not quite sure why they did that. And then I was like, okay, well that's good. That gives the people a little bit of a bonus as to why or as to what's coming. That's fantastic. But then they didn't include the things inside the normal blog post, which I don't know. Maybe they're trying new things. They have some new people working in their social team and their marketing team. So maybe they're just trying different ways to generate excitement and people interacting with them on Twitter. But yeah, it was a little odd for sure.
I fully think it's a great idea for them to tweet that out, but they should also include it in the blog post. But
Yeah.
the games that are Stadia Pro games, which you can claim today, because today is the first of the month. For those of you who don't know, each month you get. I don't like saying free games, but you get games that are included with your Stadia Pro subscription, your optional Stadia
Right.
Pro subscription. And this month we are getting Killer Queen Black, Valkyria Chronicles 4, Grime, It Came from Space and Ate Our Brains, and Epistory Typing Chronicles. The one that I'm most excited for, Grime comes out tomorrow. So those of you that are looking for it, it doesn't drop until tomorrow, but you won't
Yep.
have to pay for it if you subscribe to Stadia Pro. That's the
Mhm.
one that I'm most excited for. But the one that I think everybody needs to absolutely 100% check out is Valkyria Chronicles 4. I adore that game. It's awesome. It's this turn-based strategy game with third-person shooting mixed in. It's really, really good, and I hope everybody checks that out. But I'm very
Yeah.
excited for Grime because it looks like I'm gonna say almost like a Metroidvania Mega Man style, where you fight
Yeah.
something and steal its powers. I'm very excited for Grime.
Yeah, Grime looks really good. It looks Dark Soulsy to me. Like the battles all seem to be um I seem to have some weight behind them. Like you're not just
Hmm.
from the screenshots and video that I've seen. It's not like you're going through rooms that are filled with like zombies that take one hit or whatever. It feels like everything has a little bit of weight and danger behind it, which is really nice. These are a great collection of games. There's a dual stick shooter. There's a multiplayer focus game. There's a role playing game. There's a typing game with that has RPG parts in it, and then there's Grime, which is a game that everyone's excited for. Fantastic set of titles. I'm actually really excited to play Epistory. This is the one game in here, other than Grime, of course, that I haven't played yet. So I want to jump in. I've almost bought this a game so many times when I've wanted to fill a few minutes, and I'm like, oh, I need to do something new. What's on Stadia that I don't own? I'm like, oh, Epistory. Maybe next time. So being able to get in and play this game, I'm going to be very excited about. But then tomorrow, it's going to be all grime all the time.
Yeah. I think that what they absolutely should have done with this tweet, and I don't know, maybe it's hard, maybe you can't do that on Twitter. I'm not sure. This just occurred to me. These should have links that I could click that I can then play. If they could make like a little short link, Killer Queen Black, and I could click the little link and take me right to the game and play it, that would be a good idea from Stadia. I feel like they don't take advantage of their click to play stuff as much as they could.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, I could definitely see that. It's going to be interesting once these new contracts start rolling out and people are getting bounties for click to play and screenshot, screen share, and all this other stuff. I want to see what the marketing turns into for both from Stadia, but also from all these third party developers and publishers, because I think that could be really interesting to see all the Stadia links flying everywhere. As I said when we started talking about this, it's going to be amazing advertisement for Stadia without Stadia having to advertise, just to get all these links out into the public domain.
Hmm. All right, let's talk about something that surprised us. I had already posted the show, or I probably would have had a different thumbnail and title for the episode of the podcast over on the YouTube channel. But Google just announced that, or they haven't announced it yet. I'm sure it'll be on the This Week in Stadia thing. Uh,
Mm.
the thing that we have said that was going to come a million times. They were doing the Resident Evil deal in order to get rid of the Premier editions. They were doing the Cyberpunk deal in order to get rid of uh, those Premier editions. There was another deal where they were giving away a Premier edition. I can't remember what it was, but they gave away a
Right.
whole bunch of the Premier editions. And for those of you that don't know, the Premier edition is a controller and a Chromecast Ultra with an Ethernet adapter, all in a package. It also comes with a month of, maybe it's 3 months. It comes with some amount of Stadia Pro, which is awesome. And as soon as they announced Sabrina, which was the code name for Google TV, Lloyd and I were saying, all right, well, they're getting rid of those Premier editions so that they can ship it with this, because it comes with a remote, and a lot of people don't like to use the Chromecast because it doesn't have a remote. Well,
Right.
it's finally here. The Play and Watch Google TV package, which is a weird title, but you can now order a Stadia controller, which usually goes for $70, and
Right.
a Chromecast, or a Google TV, which usually goes for $50, for $100. So you're essentially saving $20. You get to pick the color of both the controller and your remote. So basically, you can say, all right, well, I want the sky blue remote, and I want the wasabi. Clearly, you want the wasabi controller because it's awesome looking.
Yep.
And then if you want to add on an Ethernet adapter, that's an extra $10. We'll get to the Ethernet adapter in a minute. What do you think
Mhm.
about this, Lloyd?
I think it's great. I was wondering what the US price was because I can only see the Canadian one. And it's $140 up here in Canada, but it's the same savings, save 19%. It would be nice if we could save $19 plus the 30% exchange that we're paying up here in Canada, which would be a little bit more of a savings. But yeah, the ability to choose your Chromecast color from, what is it, snow, sunrise, and sky, great names for it, and then pick your Stadia controller, clearly white, just black, or wasabi. Really, they only need to have one choice there. It's clearly wasabi. Is great. I'm a little concerned that you have to add an Ethernet adapter, because that's asking for bad performance potentially down the road. Although the Sabrina Chromecast with Google TV has better Wi-Fi. I've been using one on a TV upstairs that isn't wired, and with the old Chromecast, I was getting dropouts constantly just because of my Wi-Fi network. I'm not really getting that with this new device. So maybe the better antennas, better radios, I guess, would be probably the biggest change here. Makes a huge difference. So maybe without the Ethernet adapter would be enough for most people. But yeah, I I thought it would just be included with everything here. Maybe a future one will.
I think it's fine that they don't include the Ethernet adapter because there's a lot of people who just don't have Ethernet anywhere near their TV, and that means that they are paying for a thing that they will not use. So
Yep.
my guess is what would have happened if they said, "All right, if somebody was in charge and they said, "All right, there has to be an Ethernet adapter in every single one of these," then they would have charged $10 more and everybody would be spending $10 whether they would be using the Ethernet adapter or not. Now, I
Right.
do understand that there's going to be a lot of people who will buy this thing and they won't understand that an Ethernet adapter will improve their experience.
Right.
But there's, I just feel like this is the same thing when we go back to when it first when the Google TV first came out, is
Mm.
that there's a lot of people who don't have Ethernet. Yeah, they have Ethernet that goes to their Wi-Fi router, but that's it.
Right. Yeah.
Or maybe they don't even have any Ethernet because their modem is their Wi-Fi router. So, like that
Right.
kind of thing, people don't want to pay for a thing that they're not using. So that's, in my opinion, why it's okay that they didn't include an Ethernet adapter. But I saw a lot of people who were mad about that.
Yeah, I mean, the reality from a component cost standpoint, what you're buying without the Ethernet adapter still comes with a power adapter, and the cost to add the Ethernet inside, it can't be more than a few pennies when you're making it
That's
at
true.
when you're making it in millions of units, right? So it's just weird that they have that choice. But anyway, maybe maybe Google's confident in their Wi-Fi antennas, and it just, to me, having Wi-Fi and something that's sitting beside a TV that has, or sitting behind a TV rather, that has so much shielding in it, which, because they don't want RF interference interrupting your TV experience. Well, you kind of need you need the radio frequency stuff to go through your TV then. So it's weird that this works at all when it's behind your TV, but I guess Google's really confident in it. The one thing about this whole package that makes me kind of giggle is on the first slide of their image. It says 1 month of Stadia Pro included for new players. Well, it's not included as part of this package. It's included of signing up for a new account, because everybody gets 1 month of Stadia Pro, and I'm like, that's kind of tricky, Google, but yeah, I get it. This is great. I want to see these in stores, like an all white one, one that has a white Chromecast with a black controller, or a Wasabi controller. I think getting these in front of people is going to be a good thing again, because seeing Best Buy screenshots, or pictures rather, not screenshots, of people going through Best Buy and seeing all the Stadia stuff was great to see. So hopefully they're planning to do the same thing with this bundle.
The last thing I'll say before we move on from this is, I don't like, if you aren't in the know when it comes to this stuff and you go to buy this and you go to the website and you click on, oh, what's the color change, and you click on sunrise and nothing changes, and then
Yeah.
you click on the controller and you're like, oh, what does just black look like, what does wasabi look like, and it doesn't show you what it looks like that's
Yeah.
just bad website design.
Yeah.
What is that all about? Like, how am I gonna make that decision? If I like, how am I gonna decide that the wasabi is clearly the best controller if I don't get to see it?
Yeah, yeah, I thought that was weird as well, and I thought it was just like my browser was doing weird things. Because if you go sideways, or if you hit like the right button to change your screenshots, you have to go through each one twice, and I'm like, oh, okay, maybe it's just my browser's weird. Okay, but no, it's happening to everybody, so they can fix that really quickly. Hopefully, they get on the ball and get that done.
All right. So if you clicked on this thumbnail over on the YouTube channel, then you were like, what is he talking about Jank for? And there's this blog post that came out on the 26th over at Stadia.dev, which is like their Stadia blog, which is not the consumer facing blog. This is
Right.
for devs. And there was some really, really interesting stuff in there about how, even though you're not necessarily designing a cloud native game, and how can you still utilize the cloud in order to make things better for your customers. And this was really, really an interesting read. So absolutely, I'm only going to hit some highlights here, and then Lloyd and I'll have a discussion about it. But I highly recommend that if you are interested in what makes playing games in the cloud an improvement over playing games on a local machine, even if that game was not designed with the cloud in mind, then definitely give this a read. So, a couple of quotes that I want to grab here. First off, it says, the quote is, "Games are an interesting medium where visualization, controls, and sound become an extension of your experience until your vision stutters and you jump 2 feet forward from where you were standing." So then they loaded up Assassin's Creed with this pipeline cache turned on, and then with the pipeline cache turned off, so that they could show what that stuttering is. But we've all experienced it before. We've all been
Yep.
playing a game and have your character warp forward in order to, because the game was like, oh, well, they moved and we had to do a bunch of calculations. And then once we finished those calculations, the player was no longer in the place where they were when we started those calculations. So let's pump out those pixels and show them where they are now. And your character kind of rubber bands forward. We've all experienced that. We've
Yep.
also experienced the opposite, where the game continues to draw where your character is, but it doesn't draw all of the things around you. And so we have what's called pop in, where, enemies or characters just start to appear. And we've seen this on Stadia. We've seen it on desktop PC. We've seen it on Nintendo Switch and Xbox and PlayStation. You've seen it everywhere. If you've played a game where instead of having something gradually appear, it just shows up in your face, and you're like,
Yep.
oh, okay, well, that was really, really weird. So this is what happens when you have, basically, the computer is doing a bunch of math, it finishes its calculation, and now it has to account for the fact that the world has changed while you were playing. So
Right.
here's what they have to say about that. Compilation of graphics pipelines is one of the common reasons that load screens can take a long time and why your visuals may jump or stutter, and they call this jank. Stadia can remove this stutter across all users over time. If you notice a game running better than it used to, it may be thanks to players like you doing your part by playing the game. And I think that, Lloyd, you and I have talked about this before, where we've played games and then, like, a couple of weeks better, it's a like the game just runs better. I
Yep.
I think, like, Borderlands was one of those things where I assumed, and maybe it was because of patches or whatever, but I just
It was.
assumed that that a game that I'm playing got better over time,
Right.
because of the devs are working hard in the background to fix it. But it's actually because what happens, and I'm going to give Lloyd a chance to talk in a second. He didn't get much sleep, so he asked me to be techie guy for. I'm wearing my Lloyd hat today. Um, so basically, what's happening is Google is looking at all these things, and they're like, okay, this guy, Bill's playing a game, and this thing is just happening for the first time in Bill's game, and we saw some jank, right? So let's keep that. And next time somebody does what Bill does, we'll send them that instead of running into that jank. We'll have that pipeline already rendered, already finished, and we can just say, "Here it is, Bill or Lloyd," because I saw the jank, and so Lloyd doesn't see it. And
Yep.
as you have lots and lots of people doing this over time, you continually get rid of that pop in or that rubber banding that you see in on other platforms or in other games. Did
Right.
I did I explain that right, Mr. Tech Guy?
Yeah, yeah, for the most part, 100%. The first part about this blog post that I really love is that they use the word jank, because I use the
Yeah.
word janky all the time, and everyone's like, "Well, what do you mean?" And I'm like, "It doesn't look right." They're like, "Well, why are you saying janky?" And I'm like, "That's a word I've been using my entire life." So thank you, Google, for legitimizing my use of the word janky all the time. But yeah, essentially what this is doing. So modern video games, they have things called shaders, and from a very high level, I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty tech stuff. What a shader is it's a small little program that runs to do something. So it can make your water look good if you program a shader to do the water physics. It could be things like emitters. So if you have a fire, you would make a shader that would make the flames do the flamey things, and you'd have another shader that would emit kind of like the sparks and other things. But those are little programs that are compiled at runtime, and they run in your video card essentially. So they're little programs that a shader developer or someone in the graphics team or the development team writes these little bits of code that then run, and they do their own thing. So as a developer, you don't have to say, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to make the fire looking really good. Okay, let's create these functions to do fire physics. You don't have to do that. You write a shader, the shader compiles, it runs in the background, and then it's almost like a graphics call for you as a developer when you're putting this stuff together. Again, very high level. You can correct me in the chat if you want, but I'm not trying to be super accurate. The problem with these shaders is they're just in time compiled. So when you're running them, they get compiled, and that takes a little bit of a hit. So a lot of times during load screens, why the loading is so big, it's not just taking these big textures and pushing into memory. That's part of it, but it's also taking all these shaders that are commonly used and compiling them, pre-compiling them. And then when you stop playing the game, all that work that was done is now thrown in the garbage. And the next time that you play the game, you get the same load screen, you get all these compiling things done. What Stadia is doing here, which is something that you really can't do on any other platform right now, I mean, in the future, of course, it could happen, is they're taking all these pre-compiled shaders, which are part of what they're calling pipelines, because it's not just shaders, it's other things, but they're taking these things and they're caching them. And it's not just caching for you, it's caching for everybody that is playing the game. So these
hold on, just want to say, these aren't ones that are pre-compiled. These are the ones that are just in time compiled, and then they're just holding on to those and putting them in a pre-compiled batch, right?
Which is what I just said, where they're compiled and then they're stored and cached for everybody else.
Right.
So that compiling, that thing that adds jank if it's happening in the middle of a really big action scene, goes away, because it says, okay, spark emitter number 1, do you exist? Yep. Okay. It just pulls that information in and it loads it like an asset that you would have on disk. Amazing. This is amazing. So you can't really do that on a console, because your console isn't going to go to the internet and say, hey, PlayStation servers, has anybody else compiled the shader? No. Okay, let's pull this in. Has anybody had this one big pipeline? No. Okay, let's pull it in. That doesn't really happen. Of course, game developers could pre-compile all this stuff and store all this stuff in a big cache that's on the disk, but they don't really do that. So this is just one big example of stuff that Stadia can do that wasn't possible on other platforms. Where I hope this leads is no load times. So you start a game and it has a preload of everything that would be loaded into memory at start. So all the textures, all the shaders, all the pipelines, everything, and just take that big like couple gigs of data in a data file and just instantly drop it into memory. So you hit start on a game, you get the nice little Stadia logo, and then next thing you know, you're at the main menu and you can jump right into the game. I hope that's where this is leading. And then down the road, where I hope this goes is if I pause a game and I quit the game, it says, do you want to save this for later? Or it just does it does it on its own, and then it saves like the last 3 save states of the games that I've played, so I can quickly switch between them. This stuff can't really be done anywhere else for a mass amount of people. It can be done like my Xbox Series. I can quit a game like I don't know, Gears, and then go into another game, and then I can instantly switch back to Gears because it's caching all that stuff on the local disk. But using Stadia and Google's just incredibly fast data centers that are replicating data all around the world every second of the day, they can do things that really can't happen anywhere else. So this is a really great thing. Getting rid of jank is something that all developers should want to do. But yeah, down the road, I'm kind of wondering where this type of like caching, pre-compiling, storing is going. I really hope Google, of course, hasn't said anything about quick resume, or getting quick entry into games. So just because I'm talking about something that I'd like to see doesn't mean that they're working on it or it will ever come. But I'm just thinking about what they talked about here and then seeing where this thing can grow, because Google's an iterative company. They make something, they iterate, and then it spawns a couple different programs or a couple different projects, and then they iterate, and they expand. It's almost like a, I don't know, mold growing or bacteria multiplying, right? But that's a gross way of saying this is really good in a programming sense. So this is fantastic, and I'm really excited to see where this goes.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate now, because
Hmm.
anytime that you can say anything good about something, you can always find a way to spin it in a negative direction. Here's where I see people arguing as this is not necessarily a bad thing, but the bad side of this is, all right, so a game comes out on August 1st, or we'll say Grime. Okay. Let's say Grime comes out tomorrow, right?
Hmm.
If I play it tomorrow, I have a worse experience than Lloyd, who plays it on the September 2nd, a month later, because
Hmm.
I've gone through and I have had all of the just in time calls made, and Lloyd gets all of the pre-compiled things that I just compiled for him by playing the game.
Right.
What's your answer to that devil's advocate argument, which I don't think is really a big deal?
My hope is that that never happens, because you have people that are playtesting these games. So through playtesting, all of that stuff should be cached and stored. If it's a cacheable and storable thing, by just people in the development team or game testers playing through the game, all that stuff should just happen. If they start putting AI into these things, so you have machine learning figuring out various other things, of course it's gonna change from day one to day 30 potentially. But a lot of the stuff that they're talking about in this in this blog post about load times, just hopefully won't happen, because that stuff will all be done before the game is even available for us general people to buy off the store.
And I'm sure that it will be, but there are some things that can't be done until you get masses and masses and masses of people playing. The thing that I thought that you would say is exactly what Alucard is saying in chat. The base level, the launch day level for Stadia is just like playing on any other platform. And
Yep.
but the thing is that the Stadia version gets better over time, and the
Yep.
other versions don't. Like they always
It,
stay the same.
That's right. It has a chance to get better over time. Google's always been a company that is fighting for less data being used, less energy being used in their data centers. Not compiling things at load time. That's going to save. It's going to save a few kilowatt hours across the whole entire Stadia base, right? So this is good for Google. It's good for their energy consumption. It's good for developers. It's good for players. This is just good all around, and it's really cool to see Google working on stuff like this. Because remember when they closed down a certain company and everyone said all the development is going to be done, and this is a dead platform. Clearly that is not the case, and as we said, they're just focusing their efforts in other places, and we're starting to see the fruits of some of that focus with something like this.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on. We got a little bit of more news from a job listing, and this
Yeah.
kind of confirms what Lloyd and I have said before. But there's this job listing that basically is saying it was on cloud, or it was on LinkedIn. It was found by Cloudy Games, and basically it confirms that what Stadia wants to do, in addition to running what they in addition to doing what they're already doing, they're also going to be working to make it so that other publishers can use Stadia's backend to roll their own cloud stuff. So, if
Yep.
I'm a publisher A, I can say, all right, well, I'm going to sell my game on my website, and they'll be playing it on Stadia servers, but I'm just
Mhm.
selling my game on my website. And I think that there's a lot of people who hear something like that, and they get irritated. I'm going to give you the actual quote. It says, "In addition to building our own video game platform, we see an important opportunity to make our infrastructure tools available to partners who want to build their own interactive streaming platforms. Our goal is to build long-term sustainable business that helps grow the industry across gaming and other interactive streaming applications.
Yep.
For me personally, I think that this is absolutely great. And there's going to
Yep.
be people who are like, "But I only want to play on Stadia." And that mentality I just don't understand, because this is essentially the same thing that you're getting. It's just owned by somebody else. It's not even owned by some, well, you know what I mean, Lloyd?
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting, and people are like, "See, this is the beginning of the end." People focus on Stadia failing so much online, and it just drives me insane. This isn't the beginning of the end. Google talked about this from almost day one, that
Yeah.
they're looking at powering other people's stores. Like, this isn't news. The only news is that there's a job listing now, which is great. But
Hmm.
Stadia, this was one of Stadia's focuses right from I believe our first interview with superhero John Justice when he was still part of the company. Google's wanted to do this because Google does this everywhere else. You can get a Gmail account, and everybody can get a Gmail account, and that's great. But you can also sign up for a corporate plan where Google powers your whole infrastructure for your business, for calendaring and chatting and video chatting and Gmail. No one's saying, "Hey, well, this is diluting my Gmail experience because Google's focusing on this other stuff."
That's
That
perfect.
doesn't happen. That doesn't happen, right? And the best part about this is if you go to Capcom's website and you can play all of Capcom's games in the cloud, and they're using Stadia, that means that every new Capcom game that is added to their store most likely will be added to the Stadia store. So if you want to be just a Stadia user and you don't want to use Capcom's service or Konami's service or Square Enix's service, that's fine, because my assumption is that if you've gone through the porting effort to get your game running on Stadia through your own whitelisted store, or sorry, a white something store, white
White
labeled
labeled.
store. See, I didn't have very much sleep last night, so words are tough for me. So your own white labeled store, why wouldn't you just say, "Yeah, I want to sell this to everybody"? So this is a win-win-win. Google gets to get more data on usage. They can do other things like cutting down the jank in other areas through precompiled or caching or other things. The more people that use their services, whether it's from Stadia.com or SquareEnix.com, gives them data, and Google's a data-driven company. More data means they can find other ways to make things work better. The fact that other companies will be advertising this stuff, it means that there's going to be users that we don't even know Stadia has, which means multiplayer is going to be better, which means just everything is going to get better. This is a really good thing. I could see where people are like worried that this means Stadia.com is going away, but it would be like Google renting out servers to other people for multiplayer games, which they do,
Hmm.
and saying, "Okay, we're now in the multiplayer game server business. We're cutting down. We're canceling everything else. We're not doing it." That just doesn't make sense from a financial standpoint. Google wants to they want to run the internet for as much of the world as they can, and having more stuff like this is just it's it's a movement towards that, which is good, but it benefits everybody that currently plays on Stadia.
From a consumer standpoint, the idea where, okay, so let's say that company A wants to put it on their website, but they decide, I'm not going to put it on Stadia. From the consumer standpoint, I still don't understand why anybody cares, because your game is still just a link. Like, that's
Right.
all it is. And that's what you go back to GDC 20, whatever it was, I can't remember. Um, when they got up on the stage and they had like the giant screen behind them and they were talking about all the stuff, and they were like, look
Right.
what happens when we put all these things together. They said, your game is a link. That means that you can put your game on Twitter, you can put your game on YouTube, you can put your game on, I was going to say Facebook, but ew. You can put your game in all of these other places
Right.
because your game is a link. And the fact that people don't understand that, I like, boggles my mind. It doesn't matter if the link goes to stadia.com, or if it goes to square.com, or if it goes to ea.com.
Right.
It's just a link. And you know what? You could just bookmark it. And
Yeah. And
really, you're not having any other, like, no, there is no other thing. Now, I suppose that, like, it's easier. people want to just go to one place for things. I do
Mhm.
understand that. I don't like loading up the EA Origin store on my PC when I want to play a game on there. I prefer to just load up Steam. I understand that, but it also, like, that comes with extra overhead on my PC, having the Origin store, the Uplay store, the Steam
Right.
store, the Windows, like all these different stores all running in the background. Like, that adds a bunch of overhead. This doesn't add overhead to anybody. So I think that gaming companies are going to go to Google and they're going to say, "Hey, guess what? We're running our game, and you know what? It's not going to have the negative connotations that come along with
Right.
Stadia all the time." And this also means that, you're going to be playing a Stadia game. I'm using quotes for the audio listeners right now. A
Right.
Stadia game on your Nintendo Switch or on your Steam Deck or on your Xbox or
Right.
wherever it happens to be.
Yep, 100%. And another big feature that many people are potentially forgetting about, but are very happy when they see what this new feature is crazy publisher only sales. Like Square Enix will have an anniversary, and on their website they're selling all their games
Mm.
for like $10 or
Yeah.
something. That didn't happen. Square Enix doesn't do that, but let's just throw that out as an example. So imagine the ability going to Capcom's website, and Street Fighter 5 is out and it's available, and then they're having some 6-month anniversary sale, and you can get Street Fighter 5 for $12 on their website. Well, then if it goes the way that I think it will, where if I buy a game on Capcom's website, it also appears on my Stadia.com library. That means I just bought a Stadia game for $12 instead of $60, and that is going to be huge. And then who knows, down the road, maybe places like Humble Bundle will start having Stadia bundles, or but they're not Stadia bundles, they're Ubisoft Selects bundles, and it
Mhm.
gives you streaming versions of them, which are just Stadia versions. Like, this opens up so many other possibilities. Again, people are saying, well, you don't know that. Exactly. I don't know that. And no one knows that. Only Google knows that. Only the people that they're going to hire are going to know that. But instead of complaining now about the future, why don't we wait until we know what we're complaining about, or not? Right.
But
So
I'm
I'm
not
excited for
happy
that.
unless I'm yelling about something, Lloyd. I just hit
Well,
my
then
desk.
join the rest of the internet, I guess, Bill. But yeah, I'm not worried about this until there's a reason to be worried about it. Because why would I work myself up into the lather over complaining that other websites are going to sell games that are running on Google servers?
All right, let's move on and talk real quick about Destiny because we're going long today. I
Sure.
want to talk real quick about Destiny 2. Destiny 2 is getting crossplay. We
Mm,
already knew that, but I really like the way that they're doing crossplay. Basically, the way that it's happening is for PvE, because it's kind of an MMO-ish game. For PvE, it's a giant pool of players. So if you are playing going up against non-player characters as your enemies, you are
mm,
going to be playing with people who are on PC, people who are on Stadia, people who are on Xbox or PlayStation or wherever. It's one pool of players, which is
yeah.
really, really good. I love that. And one issue is that they're not going to have voice chat at the beginning, which that's not great, but that's something that they said that they are working on. They are going to have text chat, which up until now you can't really do text chat on consoles. So what does that mean? Well, it means that they're going to make it so you can see what the other players or people with a keyboard are saying, but you're not going to be able to say anything back right away. They're working on that as well, and they are going to allow you to hook up in the future. They're going to allow you to hook up a computer to your Xbox, or a computer, a keyboard,
Keyboard.
yeah, to your Xbox or your PlayStation in order to type things back, which is great. But you won't be able to use that for inputs in the game, which is also great for people who are on console for PvP. Now,
Right.
for PvP, if you're playing on PvP, all of the consoles will be matched together. PC will be kind of on its own, but Stadia will be with the console players, which I think that's a problem. I think that's a problem for anybody who's on console because you can play on mouse and keyboard, on Stadia.
Yeah.
And that means you have an advantage over them. And I know that there's people who are like Stadia fans and they're like, "Oh, thank God, I'm going to wipe the floor with everybody." I'm like, "Is that fun though?" Like
Yeah.
why aren't they doing this based on your input method? Like, all right, if you are using a mouse and keyboard, shove me over with all of the mouse and keyboard players on computer. If I'm on a
Right.
computer or on Stadia and I'm using a controller, put me in with the controller people. I don't understand why companies don't get this.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Bungie has definitely been doing this in waves where they first announced it and then accidentally turned it on and then turned it off. They said that they're working on ways to completely level the playing field, which is one of the section heads in this blog post. So I'm thinking that down the road that will be something that they do, but I think for the first wave of things, they're not. I think for me, playing on Stadia just makes sense for multiplayer games because of the lack of cheating, and you can do aimbots. I guess you could find some way to have a program run on your computer that analyzes the stream and figures out where people are, but you're not able to actually look inside and see where everybody on the map is
Mhm.
because of the way that the data, the multiplayer data, isn't coming back to you. So I think in the future having more things like this where they force people or encourage people to go play on a platform that doesn't have cheating is going to make their security team and I guess multiplayer teams breathe a little easier because they don't have to keep figuring out how to combat the ways that people are cheating. But yeah, I mean, this is going to be great. We've known for ever since Stadia launched that Stadia lobbies are way smaller than any other platform. Stadia is new.
Yep.
Stadia is growing in the future. Hopefully, it'll be the size of one of the other main consoles, and then that won't be the problem. But this is a great way to kind of mitigate that, and it's also a good way to mitigate that in the future when your game isn't new, and maybe you have a 10% of the total audience of your game is still playing. Having larger pools is going to make that easier for games as a service like Destiny 2 to stay relevant and keep multiplayer happening. So this is a bonus. I do worry, like you, Bill, a little bit about mouse and keyboard kind of poning the noobs, as my son would say. I don't know how much of a problem it's going to be, but I'm sure Bungie will make adjustments as things kind of crop up.
That makes sense. All right. Real quick before we wrap up the show, we did get an official gameplay trailer for FIFA,
Yeah.
and I mean it looks nice. I I don't get excited about this. Not be th- How much does the animation really improve the game as you're playing this game? Or are you just looking at where the ball is and where the little icon that's under the player that you're playing as is? Like,
Right.
do you really see this stuff when you're playing, or are you focused on the gameplay mechanics so much that it just kind of fades away? I mean, it's cool. Don't get me wrong. It's cool,
Mhm.
but is it important?
I think the hypermotion technology that they're adding in here is going to change the game. Like obviously with a bit of a joke there, but the ability to kind of juggle the ball away from attackers in a different way, that having people wear these motion capture suits and do the things that they would do on the pitch is going to be huge for just changing the way that kind of the ball handling in FIFA will go. Of course, they have to design a system that adapts to all the different animation frames and how players are playing while they're playing the game. But that's kind of what they're doing. They have these set motions as canned animations, and then they have a way for using the computer learning AI stuff to kind of go between one and the other. And if this turns into better ball juggling, so you can stop having people just do a slide in and kick the ball away and trip you and not get a penalty, or get a card. That is great. Soccer is probably one of the harder sports games to simulate just because of the ball physics and the large pitch and the number of people on the field, and properly simulating kind of the way that actual soccer players when they're playing move on the field and stuff like that. So I guess time will tell. It looks great having better animations and the player actually doing what you want the player to do while you're playing is going to be huge. I want to say this. I want to see this rather in NHL. I want to see things because they've added stuff like, look, you can do stick checking and you can deke around and you can have all this other great stuff. And it was kind of trash, to be quite honest. It was all a lot of like smoke and mirrors. But if they can use this type of technology to really more simulate what real players would do just by not having 12 canned animations, I think it's going to be great for sports games. But time will tell.
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it is when I am playing a game and I push, like, let's say I'm playing a soccer game, my character has the ball. I push down on my thumbstick, my character starts running down on the pitch,
Mhm.
towards the bottom of the screen. Has the animation actually changed the way that the game plays, or did it just change the way that it looks to somebody who's watching the game and not playing the game?
Right. I know what you're saying, and I guess time will tell. If you're just moving up and down and no one's around you, it's probably not going to change the game. But if you're being pressured by two defenders as you're trying to move towards the goal and take a shot, 4,000 animations compared to I think it was 300 before
Mhm.
or 1,200 or whatever that number is. Even just having the extra animations is going to be great, but then having the machine learning be able to figure out their own kind of animations based on how real players move is going to change it. Well, at the end of the day, are you going to get more goals? Maybe, probably not. But it's gonna make the image that's on the TV look as close to something that you're watching on ESPN than maybe it did before.
And don't get me wrong. I don't want them to not do this. I'm just wondering how much it will actually impact the moment to moment gameplay. I'm all for making a game look prettier. All right. We went pretty long today, but we got some super chats and new members that came in during the show. So I haven't looked at those real quick. We got Jem sent in a super chat with a little gem super sticker. So thank you very much for that, Jem. Eric sent in a super chat. They said, good morning. Thank you very much. The Underwood
Good.
sent in a super chat. Also said, good morning. Love the show. Thank you very much. Chase, for the Gaming Advocate, sent in a super chat. They said, happy Sunday, Bill and Lloyd. Just wanted to stop by and show some love. I hope you both are doing well. Chase. And we are. Thank you very much. And then Jerry Proudlock became a member, so now they're going to be able to watch those old D&D streams. Thank you very much for becoming a member and for the support, and thank you to everybody who's here with us, or if you're watching this after the fact, who hits that thanks button. We do appreciate it. By the way, speaking of down near the thanks button, there's this new button called the clip button, and if there is, somebody mentioned this in chat earlier, if there's a moment in the show or in any of our live streams that you're like, oh man, that was really great, I like that moment, or this is something that I want to share with other people, use that clip button. You can select like a portion of the show, and then you can share that out to wherever, and it brings people to that exact moment in the stream. So
Mhm.
thank you everybody for hanging out with us. Anything you want to talk about before we get out of here, Lloyd?
I don't think so. I'm probably going to go have a nap because I'm an old man that shouldn't have spent so much time running in the huge waves as I did yesterday. But yeah, thanks everybody for coming out. This is a great show. Hopefully what we talked about was exciting. Let us know below. Leave us a comment. Hit the little bell. We'd love to chat with you.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for hanging out with us and being here for the live show. We really do appreciate it. You are all awesome. Stay rad, and hopefully we will see you next time. Bye bye, everybody.
Take it easy.
All right. We did it. Save.
Fun. That was a good show, man.
Yeah, nice job. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out. You guys are awesome. I don't know why I came back to say that again, but I'm going to hit end stream now. So goodbye, everybody.
Take it easy, everybody.
Trying to end the stream. There we go. End.